unwilling to try something new, right? And then being in an uncomfortable situation. But like as a player, like you go like take from junior all the way to your scouting now with Florida. Like even in scouting, there was uncomfortable situations where you had to get in, but you have to face these things once in a while, right? Like I mean,
all
you
the
were like
time.
one of these guys that had to all the time because of your size and the way you played as well.
There was, I'll never forget when I went to my dad signed me up for some power skating stuff when I in Kingsville.
Young.
Yeah, I was young. I'm talking. It was right around the time I started playing hockey. Just before, just after. You're talking 6, 7, 8 years old, and I remember crying on the way to the rink, and didn't want to go out there. It was power skating. You just go out just with your skates, and finally it was like, okay, you don't have to. But fast forward a couple of years, and as soon as I had the purpose of wanting to get better at hockey, I was like, then I would go to the rink by myself, put the $2 in the shinny hockey, and I wouldn't leave the ice. As soon as I had a purpose, and I knew that I wanted to get better at it, but just being a kid and being, it was good for me, but I didn't know yet. And then I was terrified. I didn't want to go out there. I didn't want to, but as soon as I wanted to play hockey and get better at hockey, then you can, yeah, it was like a switch, just different. But there's a lot of times, I was a beginner this year, right from scratch.
Like from a scouting perspective.
Yeah, and fast forward to now, the playing chapter is done, but then go into scouting. I'd be going into the rink. I'm the new guy. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know how to fill out the player profiles, what I'm looking for, or where to go. And, asking for help every step of the way. Being like, I don't know where to go, where to park, what rental cars do I use? What airline should I fly in certain cities?
Yeah.
Am I watching?
Well, you got to be even things like
everything.
Do I share information with a guy from the Nashville Predators?
Yeah, some guys
probably keep things real tight.
Some guys, it's just like anything. People have their niches and how they do it. Some guys pull up a couple computers. They got notebooks. Some guys show up with just the lineup card.
Yeah.
Some guys don't take notes. They're just there to watch
someone
one guy.
jump out. Oh, okay.
Watch their, or they're on an assignment just to watch one guy from depends on where they're sitting in the organization.
Yeah.
Maybe it's the second opinion on a guy before a trade, or maybe they're laying the groundwork like I am on every player and on their teams.
So I got a question for you. So we talked about it on the phone like early when you started, but like scouting's an interesting thing to me because I don't know if I'd be a good scout, to be honest with you. So when they're looking at and we talk about this on a lot of our episodes, like a lot of people will say, well, in the let's say the OHL draft, they go, well, that's a bad pick, or they should, like, that guy doesn't deserve to get picked. Now keep in mind, people that are saying that have never they're not coaching, or they're not scouting, or maybe they never even played hockey. They're just using their mom, dad, and they use politics and all that kind of stuff. But like from your perspective now as a scout, like playing all those years, and now as a NHL scout, there's really no one. If you're good, people are finding you. Number one, and number two, like what do you actually do? Because if I just looked at scouting, like now I've talked to guys that are in the running teams and stuff, and I understand the structure of it now, so it makes more sense. Where you have one guy's the head of this, and it's almost like you got 5 guys working under you, and then they kind of report back. But there's a lot of trust, like for someone to say, okay, tell me what you think, because they can't see everybody. There's a lot of trust. So how about when you first started scouting, how did you go out and watch, like you're watching whatever 2 teams, like where do you start? Because there's ways to do it, right? Like
I saw there's so many names that I just didn't recognize going back to the American League, and the NHL guys I knew of, but just trying to get a base knowledge, because then it was more so tracking guys throughout the year. But a good bit of information from the older guys that were on staff and that have been doing this for 20, 30 years, where you have to pick the 6 guys, because you don't write a report on the whole team.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like a lot of people would think, because I would have thought you go to when scouts go to a game initially, they're looking at everybody.
Yeah, no, you stand out in a good or bad way.
Okay.
And the sweet spot, what I was directed in was 6 to 8 guys to write on.
Okay.
and you always try and see the good first because, like I mentioned,
Well, it's easy to it's easy
always
to
easy
say
to
can't skate
criticize.
well,
Yeah.
not tall, and,
So
and you
always
just
Rick,
start beating
Rick
them up.
Dudley told me, he's like, try and find the good in every player. That was because you can dismiss players too easily.
That's cool.
And then basically 6 to 8 guys, because then you can get detailed, or you're not. Yeah, it's manageable. Once it gets pretty thin if you try and stretch it to a full roster.
Yeah.
And then the second thing was a little blurb on the game, so it's situational. So you can look back at having a guy having a good or bad game. Was it a 6-1 blowout? Was he playing up in the lineup, down in the lineup? Was he coming off an injury? It's situational.
So 3-3.
Yeah,
games in 3 nights.
There's
Fresh on a Friday.
I remember 2 months into it, I had St. Louis was one of my teams I was watching. There was a D-man there that was available, and he had just come off of COVID.
Okay.
And I had a really bad report, and I was on him. But it turned out he really improved over the season, and he's something that we need. But if you took that one game in that situation, I wouldn't go near this guy with a 10-foot pole.
Right.
Or pick him
and
on.
So one game doesn't make a player.
No.
Good or bad, for sure.
But starting out, it was 6 to 8 guys on one team within a little bit of a profile of the game to know what's going on. That's how it started. And then, I don't know, throughout the year, again, it was different for me because I was just beginning, but to the staff, they'd put out like a need, whether it be depth in this position, scoring here, a little bit of grit here. So if anyone's available, maybe they're playing a little bit undervalued in an organization, maybe they're playing really well, like keeping an eye for a certain thing while you're just making notes and collecting information on how guys are doing. It's tough though, because it gets so repetitive. It looks all the same. You're just you're getting something, looking for something to stand out. You're looking for the details of, you got to watch closely. Yeah. It is what you make of it. And then a lot of the times I would learn as much about the players watching as I did talking to the guys that were at the games, because there's the same 8 to 12 guys watching the same area of 20 to 30 pro teams. So I'd go into all these rinks and I'd see all the same faces.
Yeah. And
these are the guys talking to general managers. It's very fluid. It keeps moving. So keeping up to date was, and I noticed that right after COVID, because I was watching some video because we couldn't get in and out of the rinks there. It was probably just after Christmas.
Yeah.
Had some game cancellations. And I realized how important it was just to have a conversation with other guys that have been doing it for a while.
Yeah.
Pick up on something that you didn't necessarily look for, or a background on a player, or background on a decision where, this guy's going to be not available next year. He's going to be available because of his contract, and very situational stuff.
Yeah.
Learned a lot.
So